The pristine halls of Frontier 7 Orbital Customs Station hummed with the steady drone of life support systems and security scanners. Dr. Alara Voss walked with measured steps, her spine straight as a titanium rod, trying to ignore the distrustful glances from both human and synthetic personnel. As a Sarathian noble and interplanetary biologist, she was accustomed to respect, not suspicion. But these were not ordinary times. The year 2384 had brought unprecedented tension between the Intergalactic Council and the Sarathian faction. A series of biological raids on outer colonies had left thousands infected with mysterious pathogens. Pathogens that bore uncomfortable similarities to Sarathian biotech signatures. Though her people vehemently denied involvement, sanctions had followed swiftly. Alara tightened her grip on her credentials, the holographic display flickering between her identification and research permits. Her mission to Terra Nova was critical, presenting groundbreaking research on cross-species genetic adaptation at the Intergalactic Conference. Years of work, countless sleepless cycles spent in her laboratory, all leading to this moment. "Passenger Voss!" A monotone AI voice announced over the station intercom. "Please report to Bioscreen Chamber 17 for mandatory inspection." She froze mid-stride, her violet eyes widening. Bioscreen chambers were reserved for high-risk travelers or those from sanctioned worlds. As a respected scientist with diplomatic clearance, she should have been exempt. The security drone hovering at her shoulder beeped impatiently. "Please proceed to Bioscreen Chamber 17 immediately." "There must be some mistake," Alara said, her melodic Sarathian accent becoming more pronounced with stress. "I have Level 4 diplomatic clearance from the Science Guild." "New protocols in effect as of standard date 2384.217, the drone responded. "All Sarathian passengers must undergo comprehensive biological screening regardless of clearance level." Alara's pale blue skin flushed a deeper cerulean with indignation. Her race's biological makeup was considered sacred, private. The very subject of her research was how Sarathian adaptability could benefit interspecies medicine, but that was meant to be shared through carefully vetted scientific channels, not exposed in a custom screening. She followed the hovering drone down a sterile corridor, passing travelers from dozens of worlds. None of them were being pulled aside. Only her. The knowledge burned like acid in her chest. The bioscreen chamber door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, clinical white walls surrounded a circular platform with scanning equipment suspended from the ceiling. A uniformed officer stood at the control panel, his back to her. "Passenger Voss," the AI announced. "Sarathian female, biological research specialist. Comprehensive screening ordered." The officer turned, and Alara was momentarily taken aback. She had expected one of the grizzled veterans who typically staffed border checkpoints, men and women hardened by years of intercepting smugglers and bioterrorists. Instead, she found herself looking at a young man, perhaps no more than 30 Earth years, with kind eyes that seemed out of place in this sterile environment. "Dr. Voss," he said, emphasizing her title with a respect that surprised her. "I'm Officer Cade Marcus. I apologize for the inconvenience." "This is more than an inconvenience," Alara replied coldly. "It's a violation of the Diplomatic Sciences Accord of 2369. Officer Marcus sighed, running a hand through his short brown hair. "I know, and I agree with you. But after the Proxima Centauri incident last month," he trailed off, and Alara tensed. The Proxima outbreak had killed hundreds. "Intergalactic law now requires all Sarathian passengers to undergo comprehensive screening, including decontamination services." The words hit her like a physical blow. Decontamination services. The euphemism wasn't lost on her. It meant the removal of all clothing and personal effects, exposure to scanning equipment designed to detect, even the slightest biological anomaly. "That's barbaric," she whispered, anger and shame washing over her in equal measure. "I am Dr. Ilara Voss of the House of Eternal Stars. My family has served the Intergalactic Science Guild for 7 generations." "I understand," Cade said softly, and something in his tone made her believe he actually did. "If it helps at all, I've modified the standard protocol. The AI will conduct the scan. I'll monitor from the adjacent control room, with visual feeds disabled." Alara blinked, surprised by this unexpected courtesy. "You would do that?" "I can't change the law," he said with a small shrug. "But I can ensure your dignity remains intact." It was a small concession, but in that moment, it meant everything. The thought of standing exposed under the clinical gaze of a stranger, even a professional one, had sent cold fear through her veins. Not just for the personal indignity, but for what might be revealed. Like all Sarathians, Alara bore the biological markers of her race, bioluminescent patterns that appeared on her skin under certain conditions, neural interfaces embedded in her wrists. These specialized lung adaptations that allowed her people to breathe in multiple environments. Features that, in the current political climate, might brand her as dangerous. "The procedure will take approximately 15 minutes, Cade continued, moving toward the door. "The scanner will guide you through each step. When you're ready to begin, simply say 'Initiate scan,' and the AI will take over." He paused at the threshold, those strangely gentle eyes meeting hers once more. "I'll be right outside. The system will only relay biometric data to my console. You have my word." After he left, Alara stood alone in the chamber, staring at the scanning arch, with its array of sensors and emitters. She had faced many challenges in her career: hostile environments, academic rivals, the skepticism of those who doubted a Sarathian could truly contribute to universal medicine. But this felt different, personal, invasive. "Initiate scan," she finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Scan initiated," the AI responded. "Please remove all outer garments and place them in the decontamination receptacle." Slowly, Alara unfastened her formal research attire, the shimmering blue overcoat with her family crest and scientific achievements embroidered in silver thread. The protective undersuit designed to shield her sensitive skin from alien atmospheres. Each item removed felt like surrendering a piece of her identity. When she finally stepped onto the scanning platform, naked and vulnerable, she closed her eyes against the humiliation of it all. The scanner hummed to life, bathing her in blue light. "Bioscan in progress," the AI announced. "Analyzing epidermal patterns, respiratory function, neural activity." Alara held her breath, willing the machine not to detect the subtle differences that made her uniquely Sarathian. The special adaptations her people had developed over millennia. The genetic markers that, in the wrong hands, could be weaponized against her entire species. "Please turn slowly for comprehensive scanning," the AI instructed. As she complied, Alara's gaze drifted to the control room window. True to his word, Officer Marcus had engaged the privacy shield. Through the frosted glass, she could see only his silhouette, deliberately facing away from the window. An unexpected wave of gratitude washed over her. "Scanning complete," the AI finally announced. "No harmful biological agents detected. Clothing may now be retrieved from the sterilization chamber." Relief flooded through her as she quickly redressed, restoring her external dignity piece by piece. When the chamber door reopened, Officer Marcus stood waiting, eyes respectfully averted, until she stepped fully clothed into the corridor. "All clear," he said, offering a small smile. "Your credentials have been updated for planet-side access." "Thank you for your discretion," Alara replied stiffly, uncertain how to reconcile her lingering anger with his unexpected kindness. "It's the least I could do," he said, genuine regret coloring his tone. "These new regulations, they're an overreaction. Not everyone agrees with them." Before she could respond, an alarm blared from the baggage processing sector nearby. Cade frowned, tapping his communication device. "What's happening in Cargo Bay 3? "Malfunction in the automated sorting system," a technician's voice replied. "Several items have been misdirected, including diplomatic shipments." Alara's heart sank. Her research equipment, the specialized analyzers, the biological samples, the data crystals containing years of work, all had been in her cargo containers. "My research materials," she said, unable to keep the panic from her voice. "They were tagged with diplomatic seals. If they've been damaged—" "Let's check," Cade said, already moving toward the cargo bay. "The system's been glitchy since the last security update. Probably just misfiled them." Alara hurried alongside him, her long legs easily matching his brisk pace. As they walked, she became acutely aware of him in a way that transcended her initial impression. There was something different about this human, a gentleness that seemed at odds with his role as a border enforcement officer. The cargo bay was a hive of activity, with maintenance drones swarming around a malfunctioning sorting machine. Containers of various sizes moved along conveyor belts, scanned by lasers, and distributed to different sections of the bay. "Officer Marcus," a harried-looking technician called out. "The primary sorter's neural network is experiencing a cascade failure. We've lost track of at least 30 packages in the system. One of those packages contains irreplaceable scientific material." Cade explained, gesturing to Alara. "Dr. Voss is presenting at the Intergalactic Conference tomorrow." The technician wiped sweat from his brow. "We're doing our best, sir, but the system will need at least 6 hours to recalibrate and locate all misplaced items." "6 hours!" Alara exclaimed. "My shuttle to the surface leaves in 2. "I'm sorry, Doctor," the technician said, not sounding particularly sorry at all. "There's nothing we can do to speed up the process. Station regulations prohibit manual override of the sorting system during a neural network reboot." Cade frowned, clearly thinking. "The next shuttle isn't until tomorrow morning," he said. "You'd still make your presentation, but it would be close." Alara closed her eyes briefly, calculating. The presentation was scheduled for midday. If she took the morning shuttle, she would have barely an hour to set up her equipment and prepare. It wasn't ideal, but it might be her only option. "You could wait in the passenger lounge," the technician suggested, already turning back to his repairs. "We'll notify you when your items are recovered." "Actually," Cade said suddenly, "the staff dining hall is much more comfortable than the public lounge, and the food is better." He glanced at Alara. "I was about to take my meal break anyway. Would you care to join me, Dr. Voss? At least make this delay somewhat bearable." Alara hesitated. Under normal circumstances, she would have declined. Fraternizing with customs officials was hardly appropriate for someone of her standing. But these were not normal circumstances, and the thought of spending 6 hours alone in an impersonal waiting area held little appeal. "That would be acceptable," she said finally. "Thank you." The staff dining hall was indeed more comfortable than the public areas of the station. Located in the station's upper ring, it offered a stunning view of Terra Nova below, its blue oceans and green continents partially obscured by swirling white clouds. The room was less crowded than she had expected, with only a handful of off-duty personnel scattered among the tables. Cade led her to a booth near the panoramic window. "Best view in the house," he said with a small smile. "You can see the capital city when the clouds part." A service drone approached, its display flashing with menu options. Alara selected a vegetable protein dish, compatible with Cerathian digestion, while Cade ordered something called shepherd's pie, that the drone promised was an authentic Earth classic. An awkward silence fell between them as the drone departed. Alara found herself studying the human officer more carefully. His uniform, though neatly pressed, showed signs of wear at the cuffs and collar. His hands bore calluses that spoke of manual labor, unusual for someone in an administrative position. "You're not what I expected," she said finally. "Oh?" Cade raised an eyebrow. "And what did you expect? Dr. Voss?" "Someone older. Less—" she searched for the right word. "Accommodating?" He laughed softly. "You mean less willing to bend the rules. Fair enough. Most of my colleagues aren't exactly known for flexibility." "Then why are you different?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. He was quiet for a moment, gazing out at the planet below. "I grew up on a frontier colony," he said finally. "Epsilon Indi 4, it was rough, barely terraformed, minimal infrastructure. When I was 12, there was an outbreak of Tholian fever. Nearly wiped out the settlement." Alara nodded. She was familiar with the disease, a particularly virulent pathogen that targeted human respiratory systems. "A Sarathian medical ship was the first to respond," Cade continued. "They risked their own safety to help us. Developed a treatment on the spot that saved hundreds of lives, including my mother's." He met Alara's gaze directly. "So when people started blaming all Sarathians for the Proxima incident, I couldn't just go along with it." The service drone returned with their meals, providing a momentary distraction. Alara took a bite of her food, surprised to find it well prepared, the flavors balanced to suit Sarathian taste preferences. "Your turn," Cade said, after they had eaten in silence for a few minutes. "What brings a member of the House of Eternal Stars to a frontier world like Terra Nova? Your family must have connections on more central planets." Alara tensed slightly. Her family was indeed influential, with estates on several core worlds. "My research is somewhat controversial among my people." "How so?" She hesitated, unused to discussing her work with outsiders. But something about Cade's genuine interest made her continue. "Sarathians have always been isolationists at heart," she explained. "We value our biological uniqueness. See it as sacred. My research proposes that certain aspects of Sarathian genetics could be adapted to help other species, particularly in treating respiratory and neurological conditions." "And your family disapproves?" "They see it as giving away our biological secrets," Alara said, a trace of bitterness creeping into her voice. "As diminishing what makes us special. My father hasn't spoken to me in over a year." "That must be difficult," Cade said softly. "It is," she admitted. "But I believe the potential benefits outweigh the cultural taboos. If my treatment protocols can save lives, like those doctors saved your mother, isn't that worth more than tradition?" Cade's eyes reflected understanding that Alara rarely encountered outside her scientific colleagues. "Family expectations can be a heavy burden," he said, "especially when they conflict with what you know is right." "You sound like you speak from experience." A shadow crossed his face. "My family expected me to take over the farming operation on Epsilon Indi, when I left to join the intergalactic service instead. My father said I was abandoning my heritage." He shrugged. "Maybe I was, but I wanted to see the universe, to make a difference on a larger scale." "And have you," Alara asked, "made a difference?" He smiled ruefully. "Most days I just process paperwork and scan travelers who pose no threat to anyone. But occasionally," his eyes met hers, "occasionally I meet someone who reminds me why I chose this path." The moment stretched between them, charged with an unexpected connection. Alara looked away first, unaccustomed to the warmth spreading through her chest. Their conversation continued as they finished their meal, flowing naturally from professional to personal topics. Cade described his training at the Academy on Earth, his first assignments patrolling the asteroid belts of the Cygnus sector. Alara shared stories of her research expeditions to gas giants and ice worlds. The breakthrough moment when she first isolated the adaptive protein that formed the cornerstone of her work. Hours passed unnoticed until Cade's communication device chimed. He checked the message and smiled. Good news. They've located your research containers. Everything's intact. Relief washed over Alara. That's wonderful. When can I retrieve them? They're being transferred to the shuttle bay now, he said. You'll be able to board the morning transport as planned. As they made their way to the residential section where Alara had been assigned to temporary quarters, an emergency alert blared through the station. Attention all personnel and passengers, the station AI announced. Solar storm warning in effect. Magnitude 9 cosmic energy disturbance approaching Terra Nova system. All shuttle services temporarily suspended. Cade immediately accessed his datapad, scanning the incoming reports. This is bad, he muttered. The forecast shows the storm lasting at least 36 hours. 36 hours, Alara's voice rose in panic. But my presentation is scheduled for tomorrow at midday, Cade finished for her. I know. They reached a viewing portal that displayed the space around the station. In the distance, the first waves of the cosmic storm were visible, shimmering curtains of energy that rippled and flared against the blackness of space. Can nothing be done? Alara asked, watching the beautiful but deadly phenomenon approach. Surely there must be emergency protocols. The station has shielding. We'll be safe here, Cade assured her. But no shuttle could survive those energy waves. The electromagnetic interference would fry every system on board. Alara pressed her palm against the cool surface of the viewport, a gesture of frustrated defeat. Years of work, countless sacrifices, all leading to this opportunity, now potentially lost because of a cosmic storm. There has to be another way, she murmured. I could present remotely, perhaps? Cade shook his head. The same interference that prevents shuttle travel will disrupt communication with the surface. We'll be completely isolated until the storm passes. Alara's mind raced through options, each one disintegrating as quickly as it formed. Without her physical presence at the conference, her research would not be officially recognized by the Intergalactic Science Guild. Without that recognition, the funding for her continued work would be withdrawn. Without funding, the Council might make an exception, given the circumstances, Cade suggested, clearly trying to offer hope. You don't understand, Alara said, her voice tight with frustration. The Council follows the Guild's recommendations without question, and the Guild is dominated by traditionalists who have been looking for any excuse to shut down my research. She turned to face him, no longer bothering to hide her distress. This presentation was my last chance to prove the value of my work before my family's financial support expires. Cade's expression shifted from sympathy to determination. Then we'll find another way, he said firmly. There are independent scientific journals, research collectives that operate outside the Guild's influence. Those outlets lack credibility, Alara countered. My work would be dismissed as fringe science, unworthy of serious consideration. Not necessarily, Cade said, tapping rapidly on his datapad. The Terra Nova Institute for Advanced Studies has been gaining recognition for its peer review process. Several breakthrough treatments originated there last year. He showed her the screen, displaying the Institute's impressive credentials. They're always looking for innovative research, especially in cross-species medicine. Alara studied the information, a glimmer of hope kindling within her. Even if they accepted my work, the Sarathian Council would never recognize a publication from an independent institution. I would lose my standing. My family connections? You would be free, Cade said quietly. Free to pursue your research without political constraints. Isn't that worth something? Their eyes met, and in that moment, Ilara felt the full weight of the choice before her. Return to the safety of tradition and family expectations, or step into an uncertain future, guided only by her own convictions and this unexpected ally. "I don't know if I'm brave enough," she whispered. Cade's hand moved as if to touch hers, then stopped, hovering in the space between them. "You crossed galaxies to share knowledge your people consider sacred," he said. "You endured humiliation at the scanner because you believed in your mission." That doesn't sound like someone who lacks courage. The station lights dimmed momentarily as the first wave of the cosmic storm washed over them, the shields absorbing the energy surge. In the strange, bluish emergency lighting, Cade's face seemed transformed. No longer just a kind customs officer, but a beacon of possibility in a suddenly uncertain universe. "I have contacts at the Institute," he continued. "People who would recognize the value of your work immediately. If you're willing to take the risk, I'll help you prepare a submission." "Why?" Ilara asked, genuinely puzzled by his offer. "Why would you do this for me?" Cade seemed to consider the question carefully. "Because I've spent 5 years watching brilliant ideas get buried under bureaucracy and politics," he said finally. "Because I believe science should transcend our artificial boundaries. And because—" he hesitated. "Because I think you're someone worth helping." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within Ilara, a place untouched by academic ambition or family obligation, a place that recognized truth when it was spoken. "All right," she said, her decision crystallizing in that moment. "Show me how to reach this institute." They spent the next 12 hours in Cade's office, converting Ilara's formal presentation into a format suitable for the Terra Nova Institute's submission requirements. What had begun as a desperate alternative gradually transformed into something more exciting, a chance to present her research without the political constraints of the Guild, to let the science speak for itself. Cade proved to be not just supportive, but knowledgeable, offering insights that strengthened her arguments and clarified complex concepts. As they worked side by side, Ilara found herself sharing details of her research that she had never intended to reveal, the potential applications beyond medicine, the philosophical implications of genetic exchange between species. "This is revolutionary," Cade said at one point, looking up from a particularly dense section of data. "You're not just talking about treating diseases. You're suggesting a fundamental shift in how we view interspecies biology." "That's what frightens the traditionalists," Ilara admitted. "The idea that our biological uniqueness isn't something to be hoarded, but shared. That we're all part of the same cosmic tapestry." "Beautiful and terrifying at the same time," Cade murmured. "No wonder they tried to stop you." As the hours passed, their collaboration evolved into something deeper than professional assistance. Cade shared stories of the scientific breakthroughs he'd witnessed during his service, discoveries that had been suppressed or delayed because they challenged existing power structures. Ilara described the opposition she'd faced within her own community, the isolation of being the only one who saw a different path forward. By the time they completed the submission, the cosmic storm was at its peak, bathing the station in eerie, shifting light that penetrated even the reinforced walls. Exhausted, but exhilarated, they sent the final document through the station's emergency communication system, a limited channel designed to penetrate the storm's interference for critical messages only. "It's done," Ilara said, watching the confirmation message appear on the screen. "For better or worse." "It's brilliant work," Cade assured her. "The Institute would be foolish not to recognize that." A comfortable silence fell between them, filled with the unspoken awareness that something significant had changed, not just in Ilara's professional trajectory, but in the connection that had formed between them, unexpected, unprecedented, and increasingly impossible to ignore. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Now we wait, Cade replied. The storm will pass. The Institute will review your submission, and you'll have a choice to make. A choice? Whether to return to your original path or explore this new one. His eyes met hers. Neither option is without consequences. Alara nodded, understanding the depth of what he was saying. Her decision to submit to the Institute hadn't just been a practical alternative. It was a declaration of independence from the constraints that had shaped her life until now. If she continued down this road, there would be no going back to the comfortable security of her family's approval. My parents will disown me when they learn what I've done, she said, voicing the fear that had lurked beneath her excitement. In Sarathian culture, sharing biological knowledge with outsiders is considered the highest betrayal. And is that enough to make you regret your decision? Cade asked gently. Alara considered the question, looking out at the storm that had upended her carefully laid plans and somehow opened a door she hadn't known existed. No, she said finally. I've lived my entire life trying to balance my own beliefs with my family's expectations. Perhaps it's time to discover who I am without that burden. The next morning brought news that the cosmic storm was beginning to dissipate, its energy gradually dispersing into the void. Station operations were returning to normal, though shuttle service to the planet's surface remained suspended for another 12 hours. Alara was preparing to return to her temporary quarters when her communication device chimed with an incoming message. Her hand trembled slightly as she activated the display. "It's from the Institute," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They've received my submission and they want to schedule an immediate review." She looked up at Cade, eyes wide with disbelief. "They're calling it potentially groundbreaking and urgently relevant to current medical challenges." Cade's face broke into a genuine smile. "I told you they'd recognize its value." This is happening so quickly," Alara murmured, still staring at the message. "They want me to participate in a virtual discussion with their review board as soon as communications are fully restored." "That's fantastic news," Cade said warmly. "The first step toward—" He was interrupted by another chime from Alara's device. The new message caused the color to drain from her face. "What is it?" Cade asked, immediately concerned. "A transmission from the Sarathian High Council," she said, her voice hollow. "They've been notified of my unauthorized disclosure of biological data and are demanding my immediate return to the homeworld for disciplinary review." Cade moved closer, reading the message over her shoulder. "How could they possibly know already? The Guild has observers everywhere," Alara said bitterly. "Someone at the Institute must have recognized the significance of Sarathian biological data being submitted through unofficial channels." "What will happen if you return?" "Best case scenario, my research will be confiscated, my credentials revoked." She swallowed hard. "Worst case, permanent exile from Sarathian territories and formal severing of family ties." "And if you don't return?" "Then I become an outcast immediately." Her voice was steady despite the gravity of her words. "My family will disown me. I'll lose access to Sarathian resources, connections, protection." The weight of these potential consequences hung in the air between them. Cade's expression was troubled, his earlier joy at her success now tempered by concern. "This is my fault," he said quietly. "I encouraged you to submit your work without considering the political ramifications." "No," Alara said firmly. "You showed me a door, but I chose to walk through it." She straightened her shoulders, a gesture of determination despite her inner turmoil. "And now I must decide whether to keep walking forward or retreat back into the safety of what I've always known." They moved to the observation deck, drawn to the vast panorama of stars, as they contemplated this critical juncture. The cosmic storm had left a residual glow around Terra Nova, a shimmering aurora that painted the planet in ethereal light. "All my life," Alara said after a long silence, "I've tried to serve two masters, my own conscience and my family's expectations. I've told myself that compromise was wisdom, that patience would eventually bring acceptance." She turned to face Cade, her expression resolute. "But perhaps true wisdom lies in recognizing when compromise becomes surrender." "What are you saying?" Cade asked, though his eyes suggested he already knew. "I'm saying I won't return to face the Council. Not now. Perhaps not ever." The words, once spoken, seemed to release something within her, a tension she had carried for so long she had forgotten its weight. "My research matters. The lives it could save matter more than tradition or politics, or even my place in Sarathian society." Cade nodded slowly, respect evident in his gaze. "It won't be an easy path." "The worthwhile ones rarely are," she replied with a small smile. "Will you still help me, even knowing the complications it might bring?" "Without hesitation," he said, and the certainty in his voice sent a wave of warmth through her. "My position gives me certain privileges, access to resources, contacts across different systems. Whatever you need to continue your work, I'll do everything in my power to provide it." "Why?" Alara asked, echoing her question from earlier. But this time, she needed more than a professional justification. "Why would you risk your career, your reputation, for someone you barely know?" Cade seemed to struggle with his answer, looking out at the stars, as if seeking guidance from their ancient light. "Because, in all my years of service," he said finally, "I've processed thousands of travelers, enforced countless regulations, filed reports that disappear into the bureaucratic void. But I've rarely had the chance to support something I truly believe in." His eyes returned to hers. "Your work could change everything, Alara. Not just medicine, but how we see each other across species lines. That's worth any risk." The use of her first name, without her title or family designation, struck Alara with unexpected force. In Sarathian culture, such familiarity was reserved for the closest of connections. Yet, coming from him, it felt right, a symbol of the new reality she was choosing. "Cade," she said, testing his name on her tongue. "In my language, that sound means one who guides through darkness." "A fitting coincidence," he said with a small smile. "I don't believe in coincidences," Alara replied softly. "Only in patterns we haven't yet learned to recognize." The moment between them deepened, charged with possibilities neither had anticipated when they first met in the scanning chamber. Alara found herself studying the details of his face, the subtle scar near his right eyebrow, the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the way his smile seemed to begin at one corner of his mouth before spreading to the other. The station's communication system chimed, breaking the spell. "Attention all personnel and passengers. Cosmic storm conditions have cleared from orbital pathways. Shuttle service to Terra Nova will resume in 4 hours. Please check your designated departure assignments." Reality rushed back, bringing with it the practical considerations of Alara's momentous decision. "I'll need to secure alternative accommodations, planet-side," she said, already calculating necessary arrangements. "And find a way to access my research equipment without triggering Sarathian security protocols. I have contacts in the capital city who can help with both," Cade assured her. "Former colleagues who understand the value of scientific freedom. And as for your equipment—" He hesitated, then continued with determination. "As the customs officer who processed your entry, I have the authority to release your containers directly to you, bypassing the usual diplomatic channels." "Wouldn't that be against regulations?" Alara asked, surprised by his willingness to bend rules he was sworn to uphold. "Technically, yes," he admitted. But sometimes the right action doesn't align perfectly with regulations. I've learned to trust my judgment in those cases. Alara was touched by his willingness to risk his professional standing for her cause. "Thank you," she said simply, knowing no elaborate expression of gratitude could fully convey what his support meant to her. The next few hours passed in a flurry of activity as they prepared for Alara's departure to the planet's surface. Cade arranged for her research containers to be transferred directly to the shuttle, marking them with his personal authorization codes to prevent interference from Sarathian officials who might be monitoring standard channels. Alara, meanwhile, composed a careful message to the Terra Nova Institute, accepting their invitation for review while explaining her delicate political situation. When the time came for her to board the shuttle, they stood together at the departure gate, surrounded by travelers of various species, yet somehow isolated in their shared purpose. "The Institute has arranged temporary housing for you in the University District," Cade said, transferring the details to her personal device. "My friend Liana will meet you at the landing pad. She's the one in the geological survey team I told you about. You can trust her completely." Alara nodded, absorbing the information while dealing with the strange reluctance she felt to leave the station, to leave him. "When will you come planetside?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "My rotation ends in 3 days," he replied. "I have already requested assignment to the Terra Nova surface checkpoint. It was approved this morning." Relief washed over her. 3 days, she repeated. "A reasonable time frame." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Practically immediate, in bureaucratic terms." The final boarding announcement echoed through the gate area. Around them, passengers gathered their belongings and moved toward the shuttle entrance. "I should go," Alara said, yet made no move to leave. "You should," Cade agreed, equally stationary. Something unspoken hung in the air between them. A connection too new to name, yet too significant to ignore. In a gesture that surprised them both, Alara reached out and lightly touched Cade's wrist, a formal Sarathian gesture of respect reserved for those considered equals. "Thank you," she said softly, "for seeing me as more than a protocol violation, for showing me another path." Cade turned his hand, his fingers briefly intertwining with hers. A human gesture of connection that sent a pleasant shiver up her arm. "Safe journey, Alara Voss," he said. "Until we meet again, planetside." "Until then," she echoed, finally stepping away toward the shuttle entrance. As she settled into her seat, watching the station recede through the viewport as the shuttle disengaged, Alara felt a complex mixture of emotions: fear at the uncertain future she had chosen, exhilaration at the freedom it promised, and a warm anticipation of continuing the unexpected connection that had begun in the most unlikely of circumstances. 1 month later, Alara stood on the balcony of her apartment in the University District of Terra Nova's capital city, watching the twin moons rise over the horizon. The evening air was sweet with the scent of native blossoms, so different from the sterile atmosphere of the orbital station or the carefully controlled environment of her family's estate on the Sarathian homeworld. Behind her, the communication panel chimed with an incoming message. She didn't need to check it to know what it contained. The Terra Nova Journal of Interspecies Medicine had published her research that morning, the culmination of weeks of intense review, revision, and defense of her methods. Already, the response from the scientific community had been overwhelming, with research facilities across 3 systems requesting collaboration. And equally predictable had been the official response from the Sarathian High Council. Formal notification of her disownment, the severance of all family ties, the revocation of her access to Sarathian territories. The document would be filled with formal language disguising the personal pain behind it: her father's disappointment, her mother's shame, the collective judgment of a culture that valued tradition above progress. The balcony door slid open, and Cade stepped out to join her, 2 glasses of iridescent blue liquid in his hands. "I thought we should celebrate," he said, offering her one of the glasses. "It's not every day you revolutionize interspecies medicine." Alara accepted the drink with a small smile. "And it's not every day you're officially declared a traitor to your species," she countered, though without real bitterness. "Their loss," Cade said simply. He had been by her side throughout the tumultuous month, helping her navigate Terra Novan bureaucracy, introducing her to colleagues who became allies, offering his apartment as temporary shelter when the university housing fell through. What had begun as professional assistance had gradually evolved into something deeper, more personal. "I received a message from Dr. Kellen at Central Hospital today," Alara said, turning toward the city lights. "They've successfully adapted my treatment protocol for a human patient with Cassini syndrome, a child who had been given months to live." She took a breath, emotion tightening her throat. "She's showing significant improvement already." Cade moved closer, his shoulder nearly touching hers as they both gazed out at the city. "One life saved," he said quietly. "The first of many." "Was it worth it?" Alara asked, giving voice to the question that had haunted her quiet moments. "Losing my family, my heritage, my place in Sarathian society." "Only you can answer that," Cade replied. Then, more gently, "What does your heart tell you?" Alara considered the question, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The humiliation of the scanning chamber, the cosmic storm that had changed her course, the exhilarating fear of choosing a new path. And through it all, the unexpected presence of this human who had seen her value when others saw only risk. "My heart tells me," she said slowly, "that sometimes we must lose what we thought we needed to discover what we truly are." She turned to face him fully, allowing herself to acknowledge the connection that had grown between them. "I've lost much, it's true, but I've also found unexpected treasures." Cade's eyes held hers, warm with understanding. "The universe has a strange way of balancing its accounts," he said, in a gesture that had become familiar over the past weeks. Alara placed her hand lightly on his wrist. But this time, she allowed it to linger. Her pale blue fingers a stark contrast against his sun-bronzed skin. "Even if I lose everything else," she said softly, "at least I've found myself." Cade turned his hand, his fingers intertwining with hers in that human gesture of connection that no longer seemed foreign, but essential. Together, they stood at the balcony's edge, facing the vast expanse of stars that had brought them together, 2 beings from different worlds, united by a shared vision of what could be. The future stretched before them, uncertain yet promising, a journey neither had anticipated, but both now embraced. Whatever challenges awaited, they would face them not as isolated individuals bound by the limitations of their separate cultures, but as pioneers of a new understanding that transcended the artificial boundaries between species. And in that moment, beneath the alien sky of a world that was becoming home, Alara knew with absolute certainty that the path she had chosen, difficult, unprecedented, and fraught with sacrifice though it was, had always been the only one worthy of her courage.